and ecosexual artist. In her works, especially after the Devil Inside Her, she marks, as Carlson said, the end of Emmy's domination by male directors. She even knows a kind of awareness and expressed via gaze coming from marginal reality, as well as in sex work. And as Linda Williams argues, feminist precensorship has always identified sex workers as standing on the wrong side of this binarism. Sprinkle devote good part of her career refusing credence and take possession of the feminist slogan, "The personal is political," using a gaze and a voice coming from a different and opposite reality, compared to the social normative, a mainstream pornographic one. In fact, provocation and marginal gaze are the tools with whom she dissembled and deconstructed a system, heteronormative, patriarchal, pornographic one. Deep inside them Sprinkle, that was written and directed by herself, introduced a new way of making porn movies, investigating female pleasure. In parallel, she had some meeting in the living room of her New York place with other porn stars like Veronica Vera, Candida Royale, Veronica Hart, and they create a self-awareness group called Club 90s, and they speak about the issues in this industry. Sprinkle living room, as she reminds in Postmodernist, recite a lot of marginal subjects, giving them voice. Between them, there was a support group for transsexual FTM. Sprinkle House became, using Hook's work, a space where one could resist. Public and private boundary in Sprinkle works doesn't seem to exist, as Linda Williams says a lot of times. She met FTM transsexual Les Nichols in the 80s, and then they had a brief relationship. After that, she decided, with the help of two other transsexual to realize a movie showing explicit sex between a woman and a transgender. Sprinkle, together with two transgender, Albert Iacoma and Johnny Armstrong, directed and produced Linda Les Henry. The movie is basically divided in three moments. The beginning remarks the pastoral narrative. We can see Henry Sprinkle wearing a very female dress, and he is surrounded by the nature, and she's writing on her diary. And in parallel, we can see Les, a rude macho, who is driving his motorcycle in a city, maybe New York City. And Teresa Senft argues that the beginning of the movie is inverting the traditional roles of the pastoral. The country maid is now the seducer, and the urbanite now is the virgin. It's immediately clear that the will of subverting the narrative traditional canons. The movie goes on with less close up. He speaks, watching straight through the camera, talking about his life, his transformation from a lesbian, separatist, feminist, Linda, to a man, Les, who loves women and who rejects radicalism. The main part of the movie is about the protagonist trying several times to have sexual intercourses. More than one time, the shot switched from Linda Old picture, accompanied by an harpsichord melody, to Linda's pictures of herself, who is about to make a phalloplasty, and clearly showing the transformation process until she became Les. The movie got started in the cinema in 1992. and wasn't completely supported by the trans community, some of them, as Dallas Denny says, were affronted and harassed by less and deeply misogynistic attitudes. Even some lesbian feminists had bad opinion about this movie because there was a displacement of the desire from a female to a male body. Overlooking the way this theme was received from the public, in my opinion, Linda Leseni is a movie that opens to an opposite and resistant space, generating a queer gaze and aesthetics. The first resistance aspect is the choice of the topic, the transsexual Etienne. In the 90s, here that conceived with the new queer cinema rise, as Ruby Rich calls it, we assist to a new configuration, new ways of narration of the universe that totally break with the past. There are few works during this period that actually face the transgender matter. For example, we can remind What Sex I Am, distributed by HBO, and above all, Paris is Burning, who investigated the universe of drag balls populated by gays, drag queens, and transsexuals. In the middle of the polemic between Bellux and Judith Butler, most of the interviewed are transsexual M12, and they basically are object of gaze and almost never subjects. The only exception was the fictional movie from Monica Creu, My Father is Coming, with any script called Acting, in which there was a trans actor who had a relationship with the protagonist. Similar to the mentioned documentaries in Linda Les speaks in first person, although he even is the subject of the gaze, becoming somehow powerful than the porn star. This choice is at the same time provocative and political. Transsexualism, in particular the F12, is always considered as a marginal subject in the LGBT community, as Silvia Rivera reminds us. FTM literature is just at the beginning in the 90s. The activist Leslie Feinberg published her memoir Stonebridge Blues in that period. His work was really innovating, even if there wasn't a deep sight on the transgender body. A more recent Testo Junkie from Paul P. Preciado, he starts focusing on his physical transformation, desire, and showing some affinity with less. When a marginal figure of the LGBT community becomes the protagonist, he gives the possibility to her unusually unheard voice. Less words are misogynist and records a rigid gender binary, configuring the transgender as a figure that restores heterosexual norm. In reality, Less body denies his words because his body becomes an hermaphrodite, as Sprinkle often says. In Hustler, she explained, with some of this operation, a transsexual risks losing the new penis, as well as the old sex sensation. Linda always loved sex and valued her sensitivity highly. Les told the doctor, Dr. Bieber, if she lost any sensitivity at all, she would kill him. Dr. Bieber heeded the warning and decided to leave Linda's vagina intact. So, having both the sexual organs, Les looked like a person that overcomes the gender, and even if he identified himself as a man, Sprinkle speaks several times about this aspect, saying, I couldn't decide if I was kissing a man or a woman, or both. It was a new twist on the Menage a Trois. Judith Halberstam, who writes about this movie, says that the video records the failure of Les' first attempt at intercourse as a man, and yet it celebrates the success of his gender flexibility. The same director argues the same thought, in the movie. Would there be a new community emerging, one of men with counts? Would there become a new political force, women taken over the world by other men? Would men now be able to become pregnant? So, the trans-hermaphrodite body of less gated aspect coming from both male and female sex. This concept is even enlightened by the song written for the movie by Armstrong, the best of two worlds. The sexual approach between Les and Danny leaves an open question. Is this heterosexual sex? Is this lesbian sex? The best answer to this question is from Cherry Smith, who underlines the subversive queer power of the movie. The old definitions are no longer adequate to describe our broadening sexual orthodoxies. Another resistant aspect shown in the movie is the explanation of what the operation of a woman who become a man means. Hysterectomy, reductive mastoplasty, and phalloplasty. Then, displaying the organs and the sexual activity of transgender is a deliberate choice. This aspect, as noted by Gorizia, is an innovative element that will disappear from such kind of documentaries. For example, in the recent Becoming Charts, Glad Word Women, no particular sequence of the surgical transformation of chastity bone in charts are presented except for the reductive mastoplasty. It is only from a telephone conversation that we understand that Charles has not yet undergone the phalloplasty, but that he is resolute in undertaking it. A third opposition and subversive aspect is the choice of using a sexification approach that melts itself in a genre pastiche with other realities, particularly that of the freak show. In post-modernist, Sprinkle tells her performance with Les and Spiderweb, a famous tattoo artist, realizing in Coney Island during a national convention in which herself and Webb starred as the barkers, whereas Les was the main attraction. As such, Les emerged as a non-traditional subject, aspiring to overcome margins in order to be accepted but as vindicating his diversity in his identity. The same freak show aspect can be found in Linda Les Henny. The playbill already reads like a cross between a Ripple's Believe or Not tabloid, a Carney speech, and a made-for-TV medical series. The movie vindicates a freak show descendant, highlighting a direct line with the freak concept of the 70s, perfectly summarized by Bernardine Dorn as the Student for Democratic Society member and then member of the Weather Underground. He said, freaks are revolutionaries and revolutionary are freaks. But when Annie Sprinkle conceived this opera, she has not yet received a PhD in human sexuality, but she already directed a video workshop addressed toward a mainly lesbian audience, the Slut and the Godless workshop video. Before the sex sequence in Linda Leslie, Sprinkle described in layman terms what a phalloplastic surgery consists of. There are three types of phalloplasty. One is genoplasty, in which doctors change vagina, freeing the clitoris, so it's protruded as very tiny penis that can be urinated through. The genoplastic clitoris penis is very sensitive. Then there is a microsurgery, which is the most expensive. Skin, fat, veins, and nerves are taken from the forearm and are attached with microsurgery. The resultant cock is sensitive and natural looking, less choose the abdominal tube method, a simple operation for his phalloplasty. As Dalla Dennis argued, outside the medical text and journal, no one else had ever shown picture of a phalloplastic subpublicity. Linda Les and Danny distanced from sex education video that were becoming successful in the 90s, as Linda Williams says, particularly those realized by self-proclaimed feminist and famous porn star Nina Hartley. The differences are self-evident since the video started. Sprinkle movies, as discussed above, refers to tabloid reality, while Hartley one wants to represent itself to a natural audience, enlarging in this way the number of its viewers. Narrative Guide to Fellatio of Cunnilingus choose a tripartite narrative model. In the first part, the sex educator porn star introduced the audience describing the sexual organ and how to pleasure the partner. In the second one, called Demonstration, using a partner for the cunnilingus, explain the scientific notion as an act is performed. In the last part, the video concludes with a brief sequence of an adult movie. In the case of Under the Hood, Nina herself, an out of the closet bisexual, takes the part in a sapphic sex sequence. Sex education videos by Nina Hartley reflects her feminist, liberal and libertarian philosophy, open to homosexual realities as well, but this doesn't put themselves in a queer dimension as Linda left. That is in opposition to mainstream pornographic languages. In conclusion, I would like to use Chris Treyer's words that Henry Sprinkle puts queer theory into practice. Her words in the end of the 80s are aimed at building a liberation sexual ideology against the static notion of identity. Her teaching and the failure of lesbian sexual intercourse are nothing more than an expression of a libertarian ideology. Thank you.
So perhaps jot down your questions as we move along. We'll deal with all the questions at the end.